Bill Merchant, historian and curator here at the D&H Canal Historical Society. Our museum here at 23 Mohunk Road in High Falls will be closed in 2 years, so we've created the virtual museum, short 3 to 7 minute segments that will tour you through this museum while we still can. I hope you enjoy. We've talked about the Wirtz brothers, the brothers who started this canal. We've talked about the route that they chose and some of the engineers and what construction was like. Today we're going to talk about what it is that they conceived of, financed, and constructed. It was a canal that was 32 foot wide on the top, 20 foot wide on the bottom, had 4 foot of water in it, and that 4 foot, the depth of water was directly related to the tonnage that the boats could carry. The early boats, 75 foot long, 9 foot wide, and they had 30 tons of burden. They could carry up to 30 tons of coal. When fully laden, they would probably just be 3 inches above the bottom of the canal. But the canal was 108 miles long, and it needed 110 locks originally. Here's a picture of a lock here. Down here, we've got a wonderful model of a lock. Virtually all of our pictures and all of our models are based on the final enlargement, what the canal looked like after 1850. Photography wasn't prevalent until about the Civil War, so we don't know exactly what things looked like prior to that. This wonderful model was made by Barbara Wakefield Purcell, widow of Manville Wakefield. Manville Wakefield wrote the book Coal Boats to Tidewater about the D&H Canal and was a founding member of the canal. So we needed 110 locks. And what does a lock do? Well, a lock is a means to take the boat up and down over changes in elevation. Let's get a sense of what they had to do here. The D&H Canal, when we talked about the gravity railroad, we noticed that they had to get up over 900 foot. That was too much for a canal on that 17-mile level. They couldn't water it. They couldn't get water to have a lock. But here you can see the route of the canal from Honesdale to Port Jervis, and then on up to Kingston. There you go. There's the Shawangum Mountains. That's why they couldn't just go that way, folks. That's where New York is. It's down there. The Shawangums forced them to take this route. Maybe it's better to see. Here's a graphic that was prepared by one of our past trustees, John Motzer. And it shows here we are. The elevation at Honesdale was 967 feet above sea level. So the first 30 or so locks, the Pennsylvania locks, all numbered separately from the New York locks. 30 some odd locks on this side take you down all the way to Berryville there, Pond Eddy, Mongop, Port Jervis. There we go. Now we're at the Delaware River. At that point, they start going up and up some more. Here we are at the summit level, 17 miles where they didn't need, between Cutterbackville and Summitville, where they didn't need locks. You can see there too, they proposed tunneling the Shawangums, but in fact, technology was not able to do that until the 1870s. They did send John Jervis out to survey it, though. That was partially because the town fathers of Newburgh wanted the canal to terminate there, and they would have had to tunnel the Shawangums. It shows you how important a canal was that the town of Newburgh wanted the canal to come by. And it drops down till finally when we get to Rondout on the Kingston, the Hudson River, more or less sea level. 110 of those locks originally. After the final enlargement, they had to reroute the canal here in High Falls. We'll talk about that sometime when we're out on the 5 Locks Walk. And in the rerouting, they lost 2 locks. As a consequence, the locks on the National Historic Landmark 5 Lock Walk are about 12 and a half foot of lift to make up for the lost locks. And then the boats, what did they look like? Unfortunately, I can't show you a picture of those earliest boats. And for the longest time, until I read the documentation, got to get around to it sometime. I always thought that this boat model right here was of one of the earliest boats. Well, if you think about it, actually, that boat is not the right proportions for either the earliest boats, which were 75 by 9, or the later 91 by 14 and a half foot boats. This is folk art, and part of what characterizes folk art is the fact that the proportions aren't necessarily accurate. I think it's a wonderful model nonetheless. As I say, I originally thought it was a model until I finally read the card that went with it. And here we see model of a canal boat built by Nicholas Bruck between 1875 and 1880. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas Quinn of Tribes Hill. Nicholas was born in 1864 and worked on his father's canal boat, probably as a mule driver to start. We'll talk about hoagies or mule drivers in a future episode of this tour. And here's a model that he made. But just to give you a sense, I'll go over here. Here's a more accurate model made by a gentleman by the name of Du Bois Weber. And Du Bois was also a mule driver in the 1890s, and then in the middle of the 20th century, he built this model. He was interviewed by Manville Wakefield, who was a founding member of this museum and wrote the book Coal Boats to Tidewater. And we might as well, while we're on the topic of Manville Wakefield, I'm going to go back to my starting point here. And here we've got this wonderful model of a boat going into a lock. This would be after 1857 when all of the locks got a gear house, when they had a semi-patented set of technology that enabled one person to handle a lock when it was two were required before that. We'll talk about that more when we show you our working lock model in a later episode. This particular model was built by Barbara Wakefield Purcell, the widow of Manville Wakefield. And this just gives you a sense of what the canal would have been like. Thank you so much for joining us in our virtual tour. New episodes will be put up every week. Hope you enjoy.